Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled Board of Director meeting for Marin Water on Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Terry, if I could please have a roll call.
Vice President Jed Smith.
Here.
Director Ranjiv Kush.
Here.
Director Diana Mayer.
Here.
Director Larry Russell.
Here.
And President Matt Sampson.
Here. Do we have any public comment on adoption of the agenda?
Not on the adoption.
Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
A first and a second, Terry, roll call, please.
Vice President Smith.
Aye.
Director Kush.
Aye.
Director Mayer.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
President Sampson.
Yes. Great. Next, we're going to pivot just a little bit and do something that's a little bit uncommon for us and move forward with our first regular item, which, like I said, is uncommon, but it's very well justified and very well deserved. Tonight, we have with us in the audience one of the longest serving board members on Marin Water's board, and we're here tonight to honor his efforts, tenure, and service to the district, and to recognize all of his contributions he made, not only to the district itself, but to the mountain and to the community. And as part of this, we'd like to go ahead and read a proclamation that the board put together for prior board member Jack Gibson. And we've asked Vice President Jed Smith to read that proclamation this evening for us.
Thank you, President Sampson. I think this one's worthy of standing up. This is a resolution of the Board of Directors for Marin Municipal Water District naming the Pine Mountain tanks in honor of former board member Jack Gibson. Whereas Jack Gibson served as a member of the Marin Municipal Water District Board of Directors from November 1994 until December 2022. Whereas as a board member, Jack served as board president in 1996, 2000, 2006, 2011, and 2020. He served on all of its committees, including the North Bay Watershed Committee, the Water Reuse Authority, Water Advisory Committee from Sonoma. Whereas Jack Gibson brought thoughtful perspective to the board policy discussions, grounding decisions, and long-term view of this district. Whereas his expansive and unmatched knowledge of the rich history of the district led him to authoring the Mount Tamalpais and the Marin Municipal Water District book, just the go-to book for our history. Whereas in December 14th, 2021, the Board of Directors had a meeting and approved the Pine Mountain tunnels to replace the old Pine Mountain tanks to replace the old Pine Mountain project. Now, the Board of Directors resolves that, 1, on behalf of the district, the customers, its staff, hereby recognizes Jack Gibson for his 28 years of service and tireless work for the betterment of his community. 2, the 2 million gallon tanks on Mount Tamalpais watershed, along with concrete pipe road, currently under construction as part of the Pine Mountain Tunnel Replacement Project, should hereafter be known as the Gibson Tanks, in recognition of many years of service and devotion to the district, its history, and lasting legacy. Once passed, this will be adopted on September 2nd, 2025, by a vote of the Board of Directors. Jack, personally, I want to thank you for your advice, your stewardship, taking me under your wing as I was running, teaching me how to do this. I'm grateful, the staff is grateful, and we have a couple of generations of customers who are grateful. Thank you very much for your service. This is well deserved.
Do you want to go hand it to him? Vice President Smith, were you able to take a picture with that, holding it up for the proclamation? Please.
Watch out.
Right here.
Musical chairs.
Oh, that's a good picture.
Oh, thank you. Jack, you're welcome to say a few words if you'd like.
All right.
And then,
Should we make it official with a first, second, and a vote?
I was going to wait for comments and then
Oh, comments?
public comments, if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah.
Go,
Yep.
please, yes.
Well, what can I tell you? You know, I am great. I mean, I have a mix of emotions, to tell you the truth. I mean, it feels awesome. I'm stunned and surprised. I'm very, very, very grateful. It is an honor that I can't quite describe it. I also feel a little embarrassed because when I heard all this and sort of processed it in my own mind, I could think of 100, probably 200 names of people equally qualified for the same acknowledgement. I mean, some board members, past and present, staff members, past and present, and certainly audience members that have over the years been diehard water watchers, giving us their opinion, their criticism, and adding to the mix, any number of which would easily qualify for similar awards. So that is not to say that I don't appreciate it, and humbly I do, but I accept it sort of in the capacity of that perspective, you know, that there's a lot of people in the water district community, both inside and outside, that are equally deserving of recognition. So with that, I thank you all. Yeah.
I'd like to go ahead and open up if any board member would like to make any additional comments.
Sure. Well, Jack, we've had a long history together. It's always been a pleasure. I view you as both a mentor and a peer. You've taught me a lot about the district and about the parts of the water business that I'm not that familiar with. Needless to say, I really miss you on the board. It is a challenge these days. I'm happy to see you here, and hopefully we'll see you here more frequently. I agree with you about the uniqueness of this. As I said in my email, I can only think of one other situation, Seeger Dam, which has the similarity. So I think this is really cool and well-deserved.
Yeah, Jack, a unique honor for a unique person. You know, I feel like I developed some basis for trying to join this board from reading your work, particularly your history, and that's something I continue to reference. I also hope that you don't view this occasion as permission to completely disengage from the district. Just a few months ago, you'll remember you and I met with one of our amateur historians in Fairfax, Scott Bowman, to discuss the location of the compressor house that was used to build the Pine Mountain tunnel. And we spoke a lot about important imperatives for preserving our historical records, which you know more about than almost anyone. And I really do hope that that is something we can collaborate on going forward. Thanks so much, Jack, for your service.
Jack, I do want to say thank you for the contributions. And I appreciate the fact that other people could be recognized, but 28 years of public service deserves recognition. 3 years so far is a lot. I just did the math. That's 25 more, and that seems like a very long road. So to be able to continue to walk it is impressive and well-deserved for this. And I think it needs to be reinforced that, history will fade if it's not captured and written down. And what you've done is allowed the folks that have moved to the county recently, given them an opportunity to learn about how they got to where we got all this. And it's very important because if you don't know where you're from, you don't know where you're going. So all of your efforts are appreciated. And I just want to say thank you.
Jack, I don't know you very well, but your reputation precedes you. And thank you so much for all the incredible service you've given to the district. I hope I can achieve a modicum of what you have. And if I do, I'll be very happy. Thank you.
Jack, I'll add one more thing. I was particularly appreciative of your focus on the watershed and the importance of the habitat and the lands that we're stewards for. And no doubt there's a lot of work we do to deliver water for folks, but I think your mindfulness there is something that has generational impact, and I want to thank you for that. Okay, should we do a vote?
Well, I'm going to see if there's anyone from the public would like to speak on this item.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we have Congressman Jared Huffman. Congressman, I've unmuted you, sir.
Hey, Congressman Huffman, thank you for joining.
Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see you guys in the old boardroom there. I appreciate the chance to be there with you virtually because you're honoring a guy that's very near and dear to me. And I think someone who will have a place in MMWD history forever, I hope. And that's Jack Gibson, who has just been so dedicated to the agency and its mission and the watershed and everything else. I'm just so proud of him and so grateful that you are taking some time to honor the remarkable service and contribution that he's made over so many years.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, folks.
Did you want me to go with more public comment?
Yeah, if there's anyone.
Ben, would you like to make a comment?
I would just reflect for a moment that governance of an organization like this, the best of governance is a partnership between the board and staff. And I think Jack really exhibited that collaborative partnership, not always easy, but always coming from a love, a respect for the district and respect for staff, and taught me a lot. And really, on behalf of all staff, just congratulations and well-deserved, Jack.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Anybody else for public commentary?
Yes, we have several. Bill Sauter, Ken Nafziger, and Ed Jamison.
I'm so glad that former Director Jack Gibson's name will be associated with the reconstructed Pine Mountain Tunnel. It's a fitting tribute in many ways. I met Director Gibson in 2005 when our community was told that the 3 million gallon Pine Mountain Tunnel needed to be replaced immediately, and the district was planning to use eminent domain to bury a 10 million gallon tank on the Blueberry Ridge just over White Hill, and would destroy one of the ridges we had fought for decades to preserve. We were told that the only way to challenge the project was to challenge the district's assumptions behind it. Director Gibson voted with the rest of the board to form a citizens advisory committee to study those assumptions and see if there were any alternatives to this giant project. Our community group stated from the beginning that we fully supported the district's objectives and were interested in understanding them, figuring out if there were any less destructive alternatives, and finding a solution that satisfied everyone. We went into the process as partners and friends, and we ended as partners and friends. Our community group met regularly to prepare for meetings with district staff and their consultants, and Director Gibson and often Director Russell would sit in on those meetings as the underlying information came to light. It took a year, but we came out of that process with a half dozen alternatives, none of which required buying and leveling an entire ridge. Jack never dominated these meetings. He listened, asked occasional questions, and provided ideas and advice when he had helpful information and insights. He also saved the district a lot of money by realizing the project was much bigger than the district needed and was in the wrong place relative to where the water would be used. That original Pine Mountain Tunnel would have cost over $20 million in today's dollars and would be useless to Eastern Marin whenever the Fairfax transmission line went down. Somewhere in the 20 years since that experience, the district seems sometimes to have moved away from citizen advisory committees as a way of sharing ideas and bringing district folks and community folks together in cooperation to reach a shared goal. Director Gibson seemed to have that instinct in his bones, and the district and the community benefited from it. I hope when the Pine Mountain Tunnel is opened, smaller and much less impactful than the original plan, that there will be an opportunity to let the public know about the way it happened and Director Gibson's role in bringing it to fruition. It would be great to have a plaque on the site, a storyboard here in the hallway outside, and a web and mailer story for the public.
I'm sure my fellow community members and I will be glad to add our tributes to Jack. And I thank very much the board for taking this thoughtful step tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken, please.
Hi, my name is Ken Nafziger, and I live in Woodacre. Before I begin, I just want to say I'm not surprised by Jack's wonderful, humble humanitarian denial of what a powerful person he is. It's just him. And it's a man I've come to know since I was working with him. It's been a long time since I've been in his boardroom, and I recognize Director Russell. The rest of you, some of you I haven't met, others I've met one time in a meeting in San Geronimo. But back in the early 2000s, when the district announced it was going to build a buried tank, 10 million gallon buried tank above Blueberry Ridge in Woodacre, I came down here a lot more. That tank would have been about twice the size of the Good Earth building in Fairfax town, and it was going to be buried under a very prominent ridge in our area. So spending a lot more time here, I also learned a lot about the water delivery system that the district has and what a complex system it truly is. Collecting and purifying water, pumping it over hills, under hills, through hills, around hills to get it to the final consumer. And the Old Pine Mountain Tunnel is part of that complex system, which is the one we're doing away with, obviously. Built in 1919, to me, it's an absolutely fascinating part of the Water District history. I've been to both sides of that tunnel and visited it, and I'm just in awe thinking about it. There was an opportunity maybe to take a tour through it back in the early 2000s, but I decided against it. I thought I'd leave that to the pros. It's a very complex and impressive distribution system, and very indeed, and I'm well aware of that. In the whole process of dealing with that whole Pine Mountain project, I came to know Jack and appreciate what a truly public-oriented director he is. I would always chuckle when talking to him and thanking him for his generous time. He would say, "Oh, that's okay. I'm just in it for the big bucks." Okay. I remember talking with him on the phone after one particularly contentious meeting and him simply saying, "Ken, feel free to call me anytime, whether you have a complaint, a question, or if you just want to blow off steam." That response from a public servant really made a huge impression on me, how open and available he was to his constituents. I applaud the work you do, staff does. I'm impressed with the openness of public comment. I thank you for honoring Jack by naming these tanks in his honor. Tanks that both he and our community were deeply involved in creating. Well, thank you for your time. And Jack, thank you for your dedicated service, your humility, and your humanity in your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Mr. Ed Jamison, and then Larry Minikis.
My comments are not about Jack. Mine was for items not on the agenda.
Sorry, sir.
So later for me, right?
Yes, later for you. Yes.
Although I will
Apologize.
say that I watched Jack for only a year and a half, and you were always on the right side of every important issue. And I thought that was really worth acknowledging.
Comes from Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Jamison. Larry Minikis, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry I can't be there this evening. Jack, it's been an honor to work with you for the 28 years you were on that board. You've been a tremendous mentor and a tremendous land steward and a steward to the district as well. And I think you're being a little too modest because this is a well-deserved honor. And I just want to thank you, Jack, for all your years of service. And with that, have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Minikis. There are no further speakers.
Great. With that, Director Russell, I'd like to offer the option to propose a motion to approve this proclamation.
I make a motion to approve the proclamation to name the two new tanks as the Gibson tanks 1 and 2.
Excellent.
Second.
Great. We have a first and a second. Terry, roll call, please.
Vice President Jed Smith.
Aye.
Director Ranjiv Kush.
Aye.
Director Diana Mayer.
Aye.
Director Larry Russell.
Aye.
And President Matt Sampson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Congratulations.
With that, we'll move on to item number 6, public comment on non-agenda matters.
Thanks. So now we're down to only 5,500 acre feet per year for drought protection, including 1,000 acre feet from hoped for but unidentified future operational improvements. And because of errors in the Jacobs forecast, this plan is entirely inadequate for meeting our drought needs. The Jacobs 8,500 acre estimate was riddled with errors and should have long ago been corrected to about 14,000 acre feet if expensive new supply were turned on after only one winter, virtually always worthlessly spilling into the ocean the next year. Or 19,000 acre feet if we wait until a really rare second dry winter before we turn on very expensive supplemental supply. Less any credible reductions to stream releases. Jacobs assumed that stream releases could be reduced by the equivalent of 4,300 acre feet annually for 3.5 years of new supply. Actually, Jacobs assumed that new supply would be turned on for 4 years before a drought even began. But in the fall of 2022, district staff strongly disagreed that stream releases could be materially reduced. Staff have subsequently estimated potential reductions at 0 to at most 1,000 acre feet a year. Stream monitoring gauges have been in place for 1.5 years now. It's time for a preliminary report on whether Jacobs assumed 4,300 acre foot reduction to needed supply was a realistic assumption. And it's time for Jacobs' other errors to be corrected to something more like 14,000 or 19,000 acre feet per year. Until last December, MNWD had for almost 2 years said we'd be seeking 12 to 18,000 acre feet of new supply. That was about right, depending upon whether we turned on expensive water after one dry year or two. Then out of nowhere, the board was told we need only 6,500 acre feet, completely unrealistic. We're living on borrowed time. If not for the incredible 100-year atmospheric river of late October 2021, virtually all of which fell in 48 hours, we would have already had a 3-year drought and a true disaster in 2022. Marin's dry future has already arrived. That was almost 4 years ago, and we're still studying this, with everything framed by Jacobs' error-ridden estimate. Jacobs' errors need to be corrected, and a realistic plan for drought survival needs to be developed. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Great. With that, we'll move on to Director and General Manager's announcements. Director Hornstein, would you like to start?
None this evening.
Great, thank you. Director Mayor.
None for me.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
No.
Okay, zeros all around. We'll go ahead and move on to board and committee reports.
Either way.
Sure, yeah. I have the Finance Administration Committee report from Thursday, August 28th, 2025. The staff provided the committee with an overview of our human resources and current active job recruitments and highlighted various opportunities available for current employees to support their career growth within the district, such as interview skills and workshops and job shadowing. I actually thought that was a tremendous presentation, and it showed how much we care about the entire employee, not just that one job that they're on. So that was well done. Thank you, Vicki, our head of HR. Staff also provided the committee with a quarterly update on monthly financials. Water sales revenues, revenue was on target, remarkably, given that with the new rate structure, well done by Brett and the team for predicting and setting the budget. And current revenue forecasts and expenditures for FY 2026 was also outlined. You can view the report on video on our website for June recording. It's June 26th? No. Oh, for August 28th. Yeah, 2025. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Russell.
The planning committee, I think this date's wrong too, right?
Probably.
July 22, it's August 7th. Was held on Tuesday last. And staff provided the committee with a review of the district's canal pipeline replacement project at San Rafael. From the meeting, the bids are in now, I presume. The item is on tonight's meeting agenda for the board to consider approval of the construction contract for this project. It's an extensive amount of pipe in the area that goes up to some fairly large pipes feeding it. Staff also provided the committee with a high-level analysis of the district's single-family residential high water users, including a review of the fluctuation of water users between tiers, the consistent number of accounts in each tier from year to year, even though they fluctuate, patterns of the highest users, and the level of water efficiency among these users. Staff reflected on how the district could target these users through our conservation programs, policy, and education. The meeting may be accessed on the video of it and on the board's webpage.
Great. Thank you, Larry. With that, move on to item number 9, consent items. Are there any items that the board would like to pull this evening?
Yeah, President Sampson, I would like to pull the minutes from our last meeting for a very minor correction that I'd like to make.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that first.
Okay. It currently states under the directors and general managers announcements that I attended a meeting of the Redwood Trails Alliance. I actually participated in one of our trail stewardship events on August 5th, and these stewardship events are supported by a collaboration with the Redwood Trails Alliance. So I think just to get that small correction in. Otherwise, I think it would be good to approve the minutes with that correction noted.
Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar with those changes as noted?
So moved.
Second.
First and a second, Terry, roll call, please.
Vice President Smith.
Aye.
Director Kush.
Aye.
Director Mayer.
Yes.
Director Russell.
Aye.
President Sampson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, a regular item, and that's going to be the Biodiversity Fire and Fuels Integrated Plan update.
Good evening, board members. Sean Horn, Director of Watershed Resources. I'm here with Haley Eligio, our grant and legislative analyst, and Carl Sanders, our Natural Resource Program Manager. The presentation we have for you this evening is an update on our Biodiversity Fires and Fuels Integrated Plan. We're going to cover some of our funding that we've been working through and helping to implement with, and also some of the recently completed work on the watershed. So with that, we'll highlight and remind everyone what the BIFIP is, the current grants that we're working under, future proposals that we've been working on with our One TAM partnership, and then talk about 2 of the prescribed burns that have happened on the watershed recently, and then looking ahead at future prescribed burns that we've got teed up and where we're going with that in general. So as you'll recall, the board adopted the Biodiversity Fires and Fuels Plan in 2019, which really provided the district with new tools to address some of the hazards that we'd been seeing on the watershed in terms of wildfire hazard, forest disease, pressures from climate change, the expansion of invasive species across the watershed, and gave us a broader suite of tools to work with and geography to conduct that work on the watershed to help address these issues. And more recently, we've been working with our other land management partners through the One TAM Collaborative on the Forest Health Strategy. And the Forest Health Strategy has really provided a science-based framework for Marin County to work under to help us understand the conditions of our forests across the landscape and to understand the mitigation actions we could take to address issues like sudden oak death or the expansion of invasive plants or encroachment of Doug fir into sensitive habitats. And that Forest Health Strategy has really become a foundational document for how we're advancing our fundraising efforts here and has brought a lot of resources to the county that we're going to highlight for you tonight. So with that,
Sean, sorry, before you move on, I want to get in one quick question, which is a little bit tangential to the presentation. So late spring is always goat season in, certainly around where I live in San Anselmo. And I will always invariably get questions asking why we don't use goats on the watershed to address some of the objectives of the BIFIP. And I try to explain that they can be quite damaging to sensitive plants. They can strip a bark from trees in ways that, are not that overshadow the benefits they may provide in terms of vegetation management. Can you just confirm that am I getting this response right in?
Yeah. So Carl and I can speak to grazing, and the district has used grazing. The BIFIP does provide us that as a tool. Grazing has a specific use and for vegetation types and the type of grazing specifically. So we've experimented with goats primarily. We did a grazing study, I think in 2020, 21-ish timeframe, looking at kind of what grazing opportunities we had on the watershed. There are constraints with grazing in terms of it takes an incredible amount of resources to protect some of those species that you don't want to have impacted by grazing. Grazing is kind of a blunt tool, and if you have a lot of grasslands, it might be a good tool, and especially adjacent to communities, perhaps. They do well on some shrubs, but there's other shrubs that are native that we want to protect that we might not want to be removing, and they're kind of indiscriminate on which ones they choose, unless you have a tool for protecting them. We have experimented most recently with goats on broom. We didn't see an exceptional amount of success when we did that. They kind of stripped the leaves off, but left the core of the broom, so it just kind of resprouted the next season. It's a tool we continue to look for opportunities to graze. And there might be future examples where we could potentially burn something and then come back and graze it to maintain it. So it's something that we're continuously looking at how it might be used. But in our past, we haven't found it to be a more efficient tool than some of the hand crews that we've been using.
Great, that's helpful. It really is, the smarter I can be when I try to respond to those questions, the better.
Just to follow up, since you opened the grazing door here, how's the cost associated with an acre of grazing relative to initial treatment per prescribed fire, follow-up, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, Carl, you want to take cost per acre?
There, we're on. It's close. It's equivalent. The challenge that we've got, though, it's a lot more work on the preparation. Getting a grazing unit prepped, and they're indiscriminate, as Sean mentioned, in terms of what they eat. They're a little harder to train. Turns out they don't like broom, but they do like some of our trees and shrubs and herbs species that we're trying to protect.
So you're saying train them to eat poison oak and broom, and we'll be good.
They love poison oak and dry grass. They do not like broom, which is something we could try to train them to do, but we're not.
But there's another component too, is that when putting fire on the ground when we can is going to have an ecological benefit that a goat can't replicate, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We had goats, just FYI, out on the watershed last year along Skaggs Road looking at Baccharis, trying to see if they would help us control Baccharis encroachment into grasslands and oak woodlands. And again, they tend to strip the leaves off the plant, but the plant comes back with all that fertilizer on the ground even better next year.
Great. Thank you for that follow-up. Appreciate it.
So we're going to transition to funding, and Haley's going to provide an update on some of the grants that we've received as the collective and how that has been used.
Hi, good evening. As Sean mentioned, Haley Legio, Principal Grant and Legislative Analyst. So collectively, one-TAM agencies manage more than half of the 118,000 acres of woodlands and forests in Marin County. And to support countywide forest and wildfire resilience, one-TAM as a collaborative responds to various grant funding opportunities. And the slide that we're looking at right now is an overview of our current grant portfolio, totaling about $15.5 million. With awards from the March Conservation Fund, the Watershed Research and Training Center, the Wildlife Conservation Board, CAL FIRE, and the State Coastal Conservancy. Again, to clarify, this is the current portfolio for all one-TAM agencies. So we evaluate which work and which agencies best align with which funding opportunities. So not every agency receives grant funds for every opportunity. Looking at this current portfolio, the district has funding through Wildlife Conservation Board as well as CAL FIRE, which is generally where our BIFIP work tends to land in terms of funding alignment.
And I'll just add one thing about why are we doing the fundraising as a collaborative? Well, CAL FIRE, we wouldn't be eligible for some of their grants because we're not doing work at a scale that would allow us alone to be competitive in that program. But when we join together with our other public land management agencies, we become more competitive. That is the case for Wildlife Conservation Board and the Coastal Conservancy as well. In some ways, we can bring match that maybe state parks or national parks can't. And by collectively working in that way, we can kind of broaden the benefit of the funding that comes to the region for this work.
Just a quick question, if we can leverage our newly minted 15-year partnership with Sonoma County to jointly try to get access to other grants that may relate to this. Might be a good idea to reach out to their grant leaders as well.
Yeah, they're, I will say, very active and have some of the CAL FIRE Forest Health funding as well. There is kind of a regional focus that some of these agencies have, and there's a benefit at times to being separate, but we can definitely look into if that scale would be competitive.
Cool.
Okay, so still looking at that current, just a different view of that current funding portfolio. So this is a breakdown of that funding allocation, as well as an overview of how that funding is advancing our current work portfolio. With that roughly $15.6 million, one-time agencies and our regional partners are on track to deliver about 8,500 forest and wildfire resilience treatment acres between 2021 and 2030. Drilling down a little bit further, that top line for Marin Water, the district is on track to complete about 5,600 treatment acres under our BIFIP with about $9.4 million in grant funds. And then one other thing to note here, kind of to Sean's point, is that the district has provided substantial matching funds for these funding opportunities. So of the roughly $8 million, the district has provided about $5.4 million in matching funds. And the ability for one-TAM to demonstrate such a high amount of matching funds has been really critical in positioning the collaborative as a more competitive grantee. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at currently, shifting now to look into the future. This is all of the work that we've done thus far has really positioned one-TAM to be eligible for regional funding from the state to implement projects that will continue to increase the wildfire and forest resilience work that we're doing across the county. And the California Natural Resources Agency, or CNRA, has funding to support project implementation for regional forest collaboratives like one-TAM. This is a summary of a grant proposal that one-TAM submitted to the CNRA back in June. This is by far the largest funding opportunity that one-TAM has pursued, requesting roughly $32.6 million to complete an additional 10,161 treatment acres by 2032. And again, those amounts are across all one-TAM agencies.
Great. A quick question on the previous slide on the current grant work portfolio. That 8,500 acres of grant funded work, what percentage of total work is that capturing? Maybe just keep it at our district itself. So we have 5,000 acres of treatment for grant funded. What would be the delta remaining from our funds, or what we're using other funding for?
So we treat about 1,800 acres a year.
Right.
We spend about $4 million a year. We're, funding it with district operation and capital at about 3 million. And so there's about $1 million to $1.5 million a year that is additional grant funding that supports us to get to that 1,800
So about 30%.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for that. And then when we're looking at these numbers over a 10-year period, I'm assuming some of them are retreatments at that point. It's all not new work.
Right.
Okay.
And so in the first column, you can have footprint acres versus total treatment acres. That's the geography is the footprint, and the total is we're going back and doing pile burning or secondary treatment at some of these locations, or maintaining it in some cases as well.
Well, and where I'm going to start driving to is when we look at this here, we have this massive spike in cost and effort and time to get us back to a place where we can get to a point. And where are we going to look at that inflection point where the price levels out, because it's all maintenance work now as opposed to this initial big startup? And obviously not a question for tonight, but as we look to get going, it's going to be really interesting to find out when that projection comes, if the grant funding continues to materialize.
And just before we leave this regional grant proposal. I can't, did you say for how many years how many years the grant would cover?
So this is for between fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 32.
So the amount of funding, even annually, is quite substantial. That's a big jump.
And so to dive into this one a little bit deeper, one thing we'll say is that this is also bringing along our partnership with County Fire. So one of these line items is to support kind of additional equipment to ensure that we can have the resources necessary to do prescribed fire when it's appropriate to do it, and that they don't draw down their own resources to do that if they're out of county for, you know, an incident. There's also equipment to replace a water tender for the district. That's something we built into these grants. There's some staff positions for, I believe, Marin Water, as well as the Conservancy and state parks, to help them have the capacity to do some of this work in the field. And then additionally, a big one is there's support for our partners at the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria to start to help us understand broadly the cultural benefits of this type of work on the landscape. And so that's kind of a new area and really being built out of this regional forest health strategy that was developed. And that was something that was built into that, that analysis. And I will just note one thing that's not captured here is there was an initial grant from the Coastal Conservancy that provided the funding for the One-Tam Partnership to develop that regional forest health strategy. And that really became the backbone for now what we're asking the state to advance through either a regional funding grant or a block grant. And we're kind of excited to see this mature in this way. And it really shows kind of the strength of that partnership.
What does that mean, cultural aspects?
Yeah, so for a long time, we thought of cultural resources as being kind of native burials or artifacts that were left on the landscape. What we're understanding now, though, is that, you know, indigenous people use prescribed fire to maintain and steward this landscape for the benefit of some of the plants. And those plants become kind of an understanding of cultural resources for how they would use them. And so there's kind of this broadening our own understanding around the stewardship work that we're doing and the multi-benefits that come from it.
Have the marijuana folks gone away?
Yeah, we did have a grow operation maybe 2 years ago that rangers and the sheriff's office took out. That was off of Bolinas Fairfax Road. Yeah, but there used to be some off of Ridgecrest. That's been a non-issue for a decade or so.
Last thing, Sean, when will we hear about this proposal?
Let us highlight two more things on this slide, and then we'll go to the next one, and then we'll talk about kind of our understanding of that.
Can I ask a quick question about the prior slide? The matching funds, are those coming from the agencies themselves? Who's doing the matching?
Yeah, so when we were saying that the district spends $3 million of operation or capital budget on BIFIP, that's the type of matching that we're talking about. And in some cases, we're able to use staff time from the other agencies as match as well.
We're the ones with the dollars.
Okay, so the $32.6 million, just at the bottom right cell there, Marin's request is $10,371,000 about, and then again, another, just right below that, we're providing or have proposed to provide about $6 million in matching funds for this particular opportunity. Okay, and then so we're in conversations with various departments of the California Natural Resources Agency. And as part of our funding advocacy, we're coordinating with those departments to tour some of the work that's been done on the watershed, as well as on some other public lands in Marin. Next week, we have 2 full-day tours with the Department of Conservation, the State Coastal Conservancy, and CAL FIRE. And we're also coordinating with the offices of Assemblymember Connolly and Senator McGuire to schedule some site visits as well.
And so the question of when would this funding come through, the purpose of these site visits is to expand on the proposal that was submitted to them about 4 months ago. They've had a chance now. We submitted it to the Department of Conservation. They then passed it on to the Wildlife Conservation Board, Coastal Conservancy, and CAL FIRE. And it's gotten very good reviews. And so from CAL FIRE, we have some high interest, I would say, at this point. And so we're hopeful that, in the next 6 months or so, we could start to see some of the first grants come out of this proposal. It's not clear to us whether the state will be able to do this through one agency or if it'll come to us in multiple grants through multiple agencies. That's something that the block grant concept hasn't really been worked out at the state level yet in terms of how they would facilitate that. So something that we're tracking at this point.
Were we responding to an RFP? Or is
We
this-
were not. So that's the interesting thing about this. So as part of the initial grant that we got from the Coastal Conservancy, it allowed us to develop this regional plan. And then we've been using that regional plan to solicit interest from these other agencies who have these grant funding programs. So it isn't through an open solicitation, it's through kind of an ongoing process that's been advanced through the California Wildfire Task Force, which is looking at kind of how to bring regional block grants to areas to support the scaling up of the work that we're doing under this proposal.
That's admirable to be that proactive in developing these types of proposals and getting them to the right people in Sacramento.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of credit goes to our partners at the Conservancy and through that One TAM partnership to have seen this coming so long ago, because it has allowed the One TAM partnership to develop that regional plan and really is becoming a model for the state in terms of what a regional plan can look like. There's a lot of other regions that were funded through the Coastal Conservancy to develop those plans, and they're not to where Marin is quite yet.
Right.
All right, with that, we're going to pass it over to Carl and talk about some of the work that's been completed under those existing grants and talk about some of the work that we're hoping to do in the future with that future funding.
Good evening, Carl Sanders, Natural Resources Program Manager. Just again, phenomenal work on the funding. I'll be talking to you about implementation. We'll be taking a tour out in Ellison next week with the funders or potential funders, and I look forward to showing them what we've done and what we're proposing to do with this significant portion of money. Tonight I'll be giving you an update on our prescribed burn efforts, specifically at Knob 2, looking at how we have planned for this work and also looking forward in terms of where I anticipate us going in the next few years with our prescribed burning efforts. Hanging on this one slide here to the right, or the image on the right, shows work that we've the sites that we've worked on and are proposed to work on, driven by the BIFIP. We're now in year 7 of implementation of the BIFIP. We just started that in July. We'll be looking at the red circled area for the prescribed burn. Of note, when we look at a map like this or whenever we give a BIFIP update, many of the polygons, if not most of the polygons that you see up there, there's quite literally over 100 of them, all have a design element within them to eventually use prescribed fire as a maintenance tool. We're setting them up with roads and barriers, and we've just started in the last couple of years to really build up our prescribed burning efforts. And so the intent is for long-term maintenance of many of these units to use prescribed burning. Most of them were built out with machines or hand crews, and we'll go to the next slide. We'll talk about the use of fire and how and the planning efforts that go into that. We take a subset of those polygons, those vegetation polygons that we've treated or that we plan to treat, and we present them to a burn boss who then helps us identify those that are operationally achievable and those that have that meet the objectives from a prescribed burn perspective. In terms of access, in terms of water availability, in terms of control lines, at the same time looking at the natural resource objectives that we have in terms of reducing fuels on the ground and or improving forest health. I got to say this year was phenomenal. We had 2 very successful burns, both run by Marin County Fire, both unusual in that they were early summer and midsummer. And both within what we call the Knob 2 unit, which is adjacent to Bon-Tempe Lake and also bound by Sky Oaks Road. The area was selected in part for its location in access to water and fantastic control lines. We had water, we had the lake on one side, and we had a road on the other 2 sides that made for a fairly low complexity burn. As this slide shows, we burned 40 acres July 1st, and we burned another 21 acres middle of August. Both burns resource objectives were achieved, and we're reducing fuel loads, breaking up the continuity of dead and down materials, reducing the annual grass thatch layer, as well as pushing back the encroachment of Doug firs into sensitive grass and woodland habitat. All of these units have a significant amount of prep that goes into them before they can be burned. This the Knob 2 unit, it says 2021. We've actually been doing some level of mechanical thinning in here since 2005 at some level, so all of these units have had some level of pre-treatments to prepare them for a prescribed burn. That's a really important point to take home.
Carl, is Unit C all prepped?
Unit C is mostly prepped. Yeah, we'll get to that, I think, in the next slide. So we broke up Knob 2 into 3 units. That was an operational decision made by County Fire, and I'll address that in the next slide. Important to Bay Area air quality. We've been working with them also for a number of years, trying to get them on board for the type of it's a smoke management plan. It's a smoke management permit that we get from them, but to get them on board with the fact that the fire is not going to be out at the end of the day, that we're going to have latent smoke, that we're going to have some amount of drift, and how we're minimizing the impacts to people through the weather, the air, the wind direction. This last burn on the 13th, lead air quality specialist came out to our site, observed it, was literally watching Purple Air, and it was giving us nods of approval and saying this is how it should be done. So that was encouraging to see.
Did you say watching Purple Air?
Yeah, Purple Air. It's an app. Okay, it's an app. It's an app open to it's an open source app that people use. Sensors around the Bay Area looking at it's just looking at air quality in their neighborhoods. Literally, he could watch the effect of our particulate matter as it was picked up on sensors throughout the East Bay. In this case, the smoke was drifting east toward the East Bay, and I think the numbers were in the 30. So that's very low for air quality concerns. A lot of environmental compliance that goes into these projects as well. The map shows 3 red dots, which represent nesting birds. Early season burns are a little challenging because we're still at the tail end of the active nesting bird season. So for us to avoid impacts to those, we had to do some additional vegetative treatments around them. And we're of course monitoring fuel moisture, weather, and site conditions prior to each burn.
What does that mean, vegetative actions or whatever you say?
A buffer. So we're space. We're reducing. So we're putting extra effort around. Yes, we're trying to reduce the fire behavior, or in this case, for the nesting birds, keep the fire out of those buffers.
Do you think the birds recognize that, or do you think they head for the hills?
Hard to say, but the nest was still there afterwards. So and
the nest isn't going to go away.
Yeah.
The question is, did the birds leave? I mean, I assume they would come back.
Yeah.
But I think that fear of fire is pretty significant. Most critters.
This is also the opportunity where we go back to the Point Blue work you did for mechanical mastication, that we can actually go back and monitor this. I'm assuming we are now with the prescribed fire areas as well.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to the environmental compliance for prescribed fires isn't as well understood as it is for mastication. There's a lot of avoidance that you can put together. So we've been having a lot of conversations with Point Blue and other, avian scientists to discuss and, think about how we can put up best management practices to allow us to implement. And then, our long-term monitoring efforts on the watershed provide us with kind of a better understanding of how wildlife is responding to this type of stewardship work. And what we saw in that Point Blue study was, generally we're seeing a positive trend in terms of how wildlife are using these treatment zones.
Yeah, we're cleaning their house. They just have to vacate for a few days while we do it.
Another point too is that with this vegetation and the wildlife that we find on our coast range is all adapted to low intensity, high frequency fires. I mean, that's been the case on the coast and throughout California for thousands of years. So.
Problem is, if they have babies, it's kind of hard to leave,
Yep.
Adults, that's fine, but you got a nest full of chicks. They're going to be pretty well tied to the nest unless they decide it's head for the hills.
Yeah. And so before any of these projects happen, we do have biologists going out and, evaluating those sites and coming up with those recommendations for the buffers that we set up. So we do have one more unit in the burn area.
So zeroing in on knob 2, we burned unit A. That was July. That one in July 1st. Unit B, a little bit smaller. Operational decision there in August. Unit C, I was just talking to Marin County Fire about that last week. We'll see. I'm already not competing, but there's already other burns on the table for fall. Either through county parks or state parks. We're also looking at going back to the theater and Madrone unit that we started last year and attempting to reburn that. But my hope is to get Unit C burned this season as well, which is an additional 43 acres. Outcomes. So, why are we burning? So we're trying to reintroduce a process, a chemical process, a heat process, a part of this ecosystem that the plants and animals are adapted to, that we do not get through mechanical and hand means. You just don't get the level of consumption. You don't get the level of mortality. And like the first slide shows, you're consuming the understory brush and grass and thatch layer. You're recycling the nutrients and the carbon back immediately into the soil. And yes, you expect a certain level of mortality to the shrub and tree species. That helps thin an area or thin a stand, which reduces the competition for water, for nutrients, and for the vegetation that does persist. Usually it is more robust because it's growing with less competition and grows with more vigor. Pre-burn conditions, you'll see too that maybe it's hard to tell on that slide, but there's been a lot of prep that went on before we were able to burn. But that's what it'll look like before. You can see some fuels cut and laying on the ground, spread out. You can see some of the trees where we've limbed them up to keep the fire from laddering up into the canopy. We wanted to keep that fire mostly on the ground. Post-burn conditions in that last image looks great. That's what we're after. I've already got some tours set up with some one-TAM members where I'll take them out this fall to show them immediately what post-burn conditions look like, and another set of tours with them in spring to show the rejuvenation and the spring growth that I expect that we'll have out there.
Yeah, and Carl, I just want to stop for a second because you're hitting on something I think that's really educational for the public, and it's going to be a component of this whole process as we continue to be a leader in the county for this. One of the benefits of late summer, late fall burns is you get the rain right away. And so you're not looking at a burnt landscape for extra amount of time. You have the ability to get the shots. And so when we start showing time-elapsed footage of this immediately, and then sometime in the spring, we get the regrowth, it's really a powerful message to see how well Mother Nature recovers and to show that.
One of the things that you mentioned, that why our early season burn was also unusual. I think we may have been the only ones, certainly in the county and maybe even in the Bay Area, burning that time of year. What we found though was that the live fuel moisture helped. It just helped reduce the fire behavior. It made it a little easier to control. Our fall burns that we had last year with the lower live fuel moisture, they were burning hotter and a little bit more difficult to control.
Yeah, I mean, people don't burn in July very often in the Bay Area. And so taking advantage of the weather pattern this year is good stuff.
Yeah, it was a cool summer, as we all a cool start to the summer, as we all remember. We did jump on that opportunity.
So we're going to see if this works. We've got a video. This was Marin County Fire. Oh yeah.
Do you think in a simple-minded way that the burn is a replacement for herbicides?
That's a complicated question. No, I mean, burns serve a very different function than an herbicide would. I mean, a burn is a much broader, has a much broader positive impact. Herbicides are very select. You're after a single plant, where I think you're looking at a community or an ecosystem with a prescribed burn.
All right, we're going to try this video. This is a drone footage that Marin County Fire actually flew during the prescribed burn on the watershed.
And I'll attempt to narrate. They use this camera before and after. This is during the burn itself. Flying over the top of it. There's infrared mirrored image here that allows them to watch the fire behavior in the the intensity of that fire during the burn, and importantly, look for hot spots after the burn. So pretty cool technology.
They actually used infrared for that, or
Yeah.
just visual?
Yeah.
Infrared.
So this is the top of the Knob 2 burn. You can see it here burning through the understory. This is toward the end of the burn, burning down toward a control line. You can see the intensity of the flames dropping down. The smoke column here rose up to an altitude that air quality liked and got sheared off and didn't affect the local community. That was good.
Almost no wind, huh?
There was a little bit of there wasn't a lot of low elevation wind, but a little bit higher elevation winds, which carried the column off site. Here's after the burn. You can still see a few hot spots in the underneath the canopy. We kept a crew on it overnight. For both those burns, for patrol purposes, and then I've actually had gone back. Subsequent days and even weeks afterwards to just double check, make sure we don't have any hot spots or smokes.
How much of the fuel is gone to leave that glow?
How much of it?
Essentially burned what it's going to burn, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, the initial burn, you're going to burn off your fuels are all characterized by their the amount of time it would take for them to dry out. In a 1 hour, a 10-hour, 100-hour fuel, the fuels that you see that are going to burn multiple hours, multiple days, or even multiple months potentially, if they're not completely cold, are the heavy materials such as stumps, logs, roots. And the fire, I mean, to burn 40 acres took us about 4 or 5 hours, but then it burns down, which is what you want. And we let these two burns burn down over the course of 2 to 3 days, and that gives us a little bit more consumption. That took a little bit more buy-in with air quality, but you're consuming and you're consuming and recycling that material a little bit better that way. Just looking ahead, or just kind of where we're at. This is what we've got now in place in terms of burn plans. About 308 acres across these different locations. We've purposely spread them out across different places on the mountain at different elevations, different vegetation types, to give us different places to select from that had those burn windows. The burn window is what we're after, that where all of the parameters within a burn plan align. That could be the fuel, the weather, but they're also selected because of their operational and their just practicality, the feasibility of them. And Matt, to your point, they're also selected because they're high profile. They're in good places for the public to watch. We're not necessarily closing the mountain down. For the 2 burns that we had this summer, we had the public still out, walking on fire roads. We had our intercepts out to keep the public off the trails immediately adjacent to a burn, but it was a fantastic opportunity to see people, to see live fire, the effects of that fire. And for our regulars that are up there week after week, month after month, they'll watch this really amazing regenerative process. Looking forward, I'll be working with the burn boss this summer on additional burn plans so that we have more in the hopper, so to speak, where I want to ride the momentum that I'm now seeing and feeling both with Marin County Fire as well as with air quality. And I quite frankly think we had really good public feedback from this. I'd like to ride the momentum on that. And if we get some additional grant monies, I want to have burn plans in place in multiple locations across the watershed again, so that we can pick and choose as conditions permit. As I mentioned, more burn plans, probably doubling the acres that we've got now. We got to do all the environmental compliance to support that. That's rare plants, that's nesting birds, that's teeny species. Completing the pre-treatments. We do a lot of that in-house. We got a lot of help this year from Marin County Fire. They're really stepping up. I got to give them a lot of credit. They put their fire foundry and their TAM fire crews out on grade for multiple days on each of those burns that you just saw, helping us do a little extra thinning, maybe a little extra felling, and establishing the hand lines or the control lines in advance of the burns. We've used pathway models and other models to help us refine where we put those treatments, both the mechanical and the prescribed burn treatments. Just last week, I sat in on a Marin County Cooperative Burn meeting where We're sitting in a meeting room with RCD folks, county fire folks, state park folks, all looking at how we can collaborate and work together toward common goals in prescribed burning. The burn that we did last year is a good example of that. Up near the Mountain Theater was in collaboration with State Park. So it was treated as a single burn, but roughly half of it was on State Park and another half was on Marin Waterlands. We're going to hopefully get back to that this fall. And again, this advances what will show the state funders next week, all the work that we're doing through One TAM on forest resilience on the mountain. And we've got great examples of that too. So we'll be able to show them mechanical treatments. We'll be able to show them prescribed fire. We'll be able to show them how we can scale that up with additional funding.
Does it make sense for us to offer the county some money?
We do.
We do already.
Yes, we do. So we, about 100 grand. And
We set up a contract with the county. We did an MOU a couple months ago. We also have a contract with the Fire Foundry. So Fire Foundry, bills us for work that those crews come out prepping these sites. And so, yeah, we treat them like a partner and contractor.
And a major benefit for county fires is many of these young recruits, this is their first experience with live fire, but in a very controlled setting. And an early season burn, especially like we just had, it gives those recruits fantastic training for incidents that they'll have to respond to later in the season.
So they should pay us.
They should.
And so in summary, we're continuing those plans, as Carl mentioned. The pathway modeling has been a great tool for helping refine, the cross-jurisdictional nature of the forest health strategy has been a great document and foundation for fundraising here in Marin County and is, quickly becoming a model for the state. And then if you haven't heard, there's the Ember Stomp event this weekend on the 6th, I believe, on Saturday. And this is more for the built environment, thinking about how folks can, create fire-wise communities and help protect against structure-to-structure spread. So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have.
Great. Sean, Carl, thank you very much. Board member comments or questions? Diana.
No questions. Thank you. That was a very informative presentation.
Yeah, no more questions. Thanks a lot for the great updates.
Me neither.
I just want to say the way that you're addressing this and moving this forward is the right way. I mean, to actually create partnerships, leverage what we're doing with One TAM, partnering with a local fire department, showing what we're doing by bringing science in, and actually looking at outcomes, not just performance measures. And I think that's what we have to continue to pivot from, because outcomes will drive additional funding. I think it drives additional relevancy, and I think it draws attention to us in a positive way, because the big ask right now is the Prop 4 funding. And very much appreciate you getting ahead of that, starting showing the work on the watershed itself, because it's going to be incredibly important to get our hands on some of that money. And I really do believe you are creating a model from which others to replicate from. And I don't mean just us and One TAM, but Marin County Fire deserves a lot of credit, not only for their partnership, but their willingness to collaborate, and Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority to be able to share their resources so that we understand the impacts from our lands to theirs and vice versa with the built community. So thank you very much for that. And also just want to reemphasize the fact that you're trying to change hearts and minds around prescribed fire. And we sit around here and it's a great idea. We know the benefit of it, but not everybody feels that way so far. So the selection of the pilot knob itself and having it right next to the road, the access road from Sky Oaks on the way in, really is a big deal. In fact, I was out there yesterday for a couple hours with folks walking, not just that, but also Pilot Knob and showing the work being done there. And I'm pretty sure I saw Chief Weber's car parked. I couldn't find him walking the burn area, but definitely drawing attention to that, because it was 5 years ago this week, the skies turned red. And to compare it to a little bit of white smoke 2 weeks ago, we're in a much better place, but we can't rest. We have to continue to do that. So anything we can do to expedite that stuff as well. A couple things with the actually selection of stuff, looking at some of the prep area for the knob, saw some handline being put in. Is there a way to actually leverage the current trail network instead of doing that, so we have the same kind of mosaic year in, year out without having to put additional work in to do?
Yes, those polygons that I showed in that first slide, many of them use trails or roads or existing, trails or roads or water, for a boundary. The hand lines, which I will get County Fire back to help rehab. That was an operational decisions to just make it more manageable.
Okay.
You know, with the conditions that we had. The burn boss had written that as a single burn unit. Maybe he's just a little more ambitious than we are at this point, but you know, the decision to put in hand lines there was appropriate. We didn't have rare plants, we didn't have cultural resources, and it was appropriate, and we didn't have to do it with a dozer. It was done with the hand line, so it should be easy to rehab.
And no question the appropriateness of it, just
Yeah.
in terms of less work if we already have an easy
A-
path.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of them are bound. A lot of the existing polygons that we would intend to burn for maintenance someday are bound by a road or a trail
Right.
or a
Right.
lake.
And I think the other part too, which is going to be important to track as we move forward, this is more of a 5-10 year mark, is what is the cost per acre right now for prescribed fire, and what's it going to be in 5 and 10 years? It should be a lot less based on all the efforts you're doing. And that's the point of this, is to future proof and bring back the cheapest, most affordable way to do that. A question in terms of vegetation modeling. At what point through your efforts would it be a good chance to take another look at our vegetation map, update it so we better understand the conditions on the ground? And then also overlaying where we're looking at disrupting pathways to show measurable difference in reduction in fire travel or speed.
Well, there's a LiDAR update that's going to occur,
Okay.
you know, in the next, Sean, do you know, in that next year and a half, maybe?
And when you develop a veg map, it becomes outdated
The
the
day.
next
Almost-
day.
almost
Yeah,
immediately,
So,
yeah.
yeah, the 10-year period would be reasonable. You know, it is an incredible amount of effort to do the fine scale veg mapping that we've
Right.
done. But yeah, that would be a benefit in the future. And as we do more prescribed fires and continue doing BIFIP treatments, we do want to kind of remodel that effect.
Yeah, and not just for an exercise of futility, but actually at a point in time that makes sense to be able to capture meaningful difference. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, no, and I think the LiDAR too will show a structural difference that all of the different agencies across the county have worked really hard to achieve over the last 10 years, you know, and that can be used for modeling as well.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the other thing too is start taking credit for the work you're doing. And what I mean by that is you've identified these burn plots, and you did it before science and technology started helping to inform us because of your experience on the ground, which really you can't put a price tag on. But when we validate it, we actually articulate it with the science piece, start capturing, hey, we disrupted this. This is what the reduction in fire speed was, et cetera. And this is how we're making a meaningful difference, especially when we start partnering with what Marin Wildfire is doing. It's going to be a pretty powerful message. So thank you. Any other board?
Oh, one more question. Is the state still flying their multi-camera airplane for ag and marijuana? I assume they are.
I don't know.
I don't know, it might be something to get them to fly over here. You know, because this thing's pretty good, as I understand. Like 4 cameras, and it's got infrared, and it can spot vegetation. They can spot active growing for marijuana. I know that much. It lights up, kind of like those Ember pictures. So they might have you know, for a reasonable price, include us in. Maybe they're already flying us. I don't know.
Any additional board comments? Great. Terry, any public comment?
There are none.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it, all the effort, especially with the grant funding. So thank you. Item number 11, future board and committee meetings.
Yeah, in the interest of time with your 3 closed session items, I'm just going to report that the week of September 15th, our next board meeting is the 16th, which is a Tuesday. There's a closed session at the beginning at 5:30. And then also that same week is the Watershed Committee meeting Thursday at 9:30.
Great. And I did see that the North Bay Watershed Association was marked on your calendar as the 5th, but I believe it's the 12th. I'll double check that of September.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Great. And we'll go ahead and move on to item number 12, our closed session items. Do we have any public comment on the closed session items?
There are none.
Okay, we're going to adjourn to closed session. Hey, welcome back. We've reconvened from closed session with no reportable action at 9:03. And with that, go ahead and adjourn the meeting.